Hey everyone, it's Marla. Welcome back to Twinstrology. I hope that you're doing well. So, I wanted to talk to you today about something that I found very interesting. So, my last video, I talked about the divine feminine transcendence and how the divine feminine has come to this realization, this higher vibrational energy in which there is acceptance of the twin flame and the twin flame journey, but there's also this understanding that the feminine cannot accept, cannot, let me choose a different word, cannot settle for the old lower vibrational behaviors. Some of the things that I mentioned in that video were getting the silent treatment from the masculine, or a masculine that will not communicate anything in the relationship, being the other woman or the other man, being used for sex, or being treated as an afterthought. And that really resonated with a lot of you. And so the interesting thing was, like a day or two after I posted that video, I started to get a bunch of videos coming in my YouTube feed that were in response to another person's video, a person that I don't follow. And actually, none of the people's videos that I watched were people that I followed. But because they were all talking about sacred union, sacred relationship, and they had that in the title, they were all coming into my feed. And it's interesting because I felt like this was a bit of a dark attack on sacred unions and really showing us the distorted energy of the masculine and feminine. And, I did kind of wonder, is this a sign showing us that the masculine is still not ready for sacred union? But because it was in such strong opposition to the messages that I was getting, I wanted to talk about it with you a little bit. And I'm sure that some of you know what I'm talking about. Um, It comes back to a video by a person named Aubrey Marcus. This is not someone that I follow or have ever watched. And actually, the first videos that I watched were a couple videos that were claiming to respond to what this Aubrey Marcus was talking about. But I did force myself to watch his video, even though I didn't want to. But I felt like if I'm going to talk about it and I'm going to talk about him, then I at least owe it to them to watch the video. So I did. Now, the title of their video is called A New Pattern of Sacred Relationship. And, one of the reasons I don't like calling out someone by name is because I feel like, these people have a right to their beliefs and they can do what they want. They can say what they want. And so I'm not arguing that, to each their own. But I did feel like there was so many things, subtle things in this video that could be construed as a dark attack, and that the essence of this message was not really coming from the light. And a lot of people that were responding to this video agreed with me. Yeah, so let's go into what the premise of the video is. So this man, Aubrey Marcus, is married to a woman named Vylana, and they have had somewhat of an open relationship. And then he talks about how he had this message from God that he should go on this dating app and he was going to meet someone. And lo and behold, he met this woman that he was just so attracted to that he wanted to begin to have a relationship with her. I get the impression that maybe they were in an open relationship, but these weren't like deep connections. So he wanted to bring this third woman kind of into the relationship. It wasn't like a threesome energy. However, the two women are spending time together, in contact with each other, have their own relationship, even though it's not sexual in nature. So his wife agrees to this, and then he talks about going to Egypt, and he's in the temple of Isis. He even mentions he calls it the Holy of Holies in the temple of Isis. And those of you who know about the Holies of Holies, this is where in Solomon's temple, this was where the Ark of the Covenant was kept. So when they use that term, Holy of Holies, they're really making this spiritual connection to God. So he claims he's in this Holy of Holies, and he hears a voice that tells him that he's supposed to impregnate both of these women. And he believes it to be Isis, but he doesn't say it's definitely Isis. And so the three of them come on and talk about this situation. Yeah, these people use a lot of words and phrases that are very new agey, like this is about radical monogamy in the field of erotic mysticism. So they're putting this very spiritual spin on non-monogamy. They use words like, this is a direct quote from this Aubrey Marcus. There's a decline of eros inside relationship containers. Also, put your money where your mouth is in the erotic jealousy department. There's all these words like loverships, portals, synchronicities, the goddess. Lean into this. And they use this word radical a lot. Radical monogamy, radical integrity, radical honesty, radical clarity, radical open heart. They talk about how they, even though they're calling this monogamy, this is their new form of monogamy, because the idea is monogamy fails because monogamy is most often deceptive, because at least one of the partners is always doing something behind the other person's back, whether it's full out cheating or watching pornography or having an emotional connection with someone else. They're saying that this is not honest. And they, again, use this word relationship container. They say, therefore, the container is no longer a safe space. And it's interesting that they use this word safe, because that's going to come up when it gets to what the wife is having to say. They go in to talk about shame, and that again is like new agey. Like, we always have to be authentic in our truth. We shouldn't experience any kind of shame in our life. We shouldn't judge anything. We should just be open and free with everything. And personally, I don't think that's always true. I mean, this is definitely something that has a collective we're learning to manifest. But it goes back to everyone has their own moral compass, and you have to set boundaries according to your moral compass. Like, is shame always bad? If someone goes into a department store and steals a $500 handbag, should they feel ashamed about that? Is it wrong to feel shame in that instance? So I think that we get so caught up in phrases, and we don't really think about the depth of things, right? And this kind of thing can fall into what I call pseudo spirituality, where it's very like surface level, and I don't feel that people are necessarily doing the deep inner work, even though they claim to be. But some of their other catchphrases here, are polyamory, plant medicine, Burning Man. Like to me, those are, there's nothing wrong with plant medicine per se, but these are kind of pseudo spiritual ideas, in my opinion. So they're saying like they want to live without any deception, without lying, without artifice, cheating. They want to live in a full and profound authenticity and grace. And they're not doing it for themselves. This is strictly for the evolution of love. So, what I see in this video is that they take a lot of kind of twin flame sacred relationship concepts, and yet they're just a little bit distorted. So, if you aren't careful and you aren't using discernment, you might not even pick up on that. Um, for instance, they don't say that they're twin flames. Maybe they do somewhere else, but they kind of hint at things like he talks about when he and his wife were being intimate one time. A white star of light came into his third eye. And he says it was like God put an asterisk in that moment. Now, a lot of you on the twin flame journey has probably experienced some kind of energy like that when you're in intimacy with your twin or some kind of like deep spiritual thing. So when he says something like this, it's almost like he's referencing it in a roundabout way. Something that he says here that I have to share with you is, and this is a quote from him: I refused to be in deception, and I had a thriving wild stallion of Eros that desired different experiences and connection. So like the wording of this like was just so it felt like really staged. And Eros, in Greece there were a lot of different terms for love representing different kinds of love. And Eros is erotic love. So what he's saying here is he didn't want to be faithful because basically he was horny all the time and he was wanting to have these different experiences. He didn't want to just be with his wife, but he wanted to have sex with other women. And he didn't want to be deceptive. So he wanted his wife to be fully aware of this because he was being radically honest with her. Now, I suppose on one hand, it is better to be honest than to lie about things. But for me, again, this is like very old, distorted masculine energy, kind of like, well, boys will be boys. I have all this testosterone, and it's man's nature to want to spread their seed all over the place. So, in my mind, at least my perception of the divine masculine, this is not the type of divine masculine that I'm trying to manifest. This is the kind of masculine energy that really has caused me to be single for a very long time because I'm not willing to tolerate that energy anymore. Another thing that he does a lot in this video is talk about his relationship with God. He claims he has a deep connection with God, and that whenever he takes ayahuasca, Mother Ayahuasca sits him down and tells him when he's not in integrity. And this is why he feels he has to be in this radical honesty with her. So he's basically saying, like, I love you, and we have this special connection that God has put an asterisk in, but I'm also not willing to be faithful to you. And that feels very yuck to me. Because sacred union, right? The word sacred, it's connected to God, it's connected to source. And when you really love someone, the passion is there. The desire for intimate connection is there. And I think that the desire for other people falls away in that situation. And later on in the video, it's interesting because they talk about making sacrifices, and they they talk about how having this kind of polyamorous connection requires each of them to sacrifice something to be able to be in this relationship. But what about sacrificing something to be in a monogamous relationship, right? Like you might see somebody that is attractive, but that doesn't mean that you have to sleep with them, right? And for me, this whole energy that they're talking about really boils down to sex. And this is why I feel it has this kind of dark energy attachment to it, because ultimately it's very materialistic and sexuality based. Because why can't they have a relationship with this person, right? Okay, this third person. And they talk about how connected they are to her and how great she is and everything. Well, why can't they all be friends? Why does he have to have a sexual connection with her? That's taking it like a bit too far, or it's making it all about the sex. And again, he's saying like he has all this sexual energy that he can't contain it with one person. But for me, the masculine energy is about control and self-control. And one of the ways they need to learn self-control is being able to master their sexual energy. So it being so material based instead of really making it sacred, even though again they're using all these key words about their deep connection to God and mysticism, and um, he mentioned several times the goddess. The goddess told us, the goddess is guiding us, which I feel is a real, ultimately, slap in the face to the divine feminine for him to keep saying that it is ultimately the divine feminine that's telling him to do these things. But if we really look at this energy, it's very patriarchal, isn't it? Um, they're trying to tout this as new, but is it really new? Right? This is what the masculine has been doing throughout time. Think about the king who has his queen, but then he has all these mistresses. And in a lot of cases, the king was pretty open and honest about these things, and he wasn't hiding it because he wasn't concerned about any backlash from anyone because he had all the power. Even going back to biblical times, and in one of the videos that I watched that was a response to this, they mentioned like even the some of the great heroes of the Old Testament, such as David and Solomon, were ultimately corrupted by this sexual energy. So King David, for instance, had I don't how many concubines, I can't remember, multiple wives and concubines. And I'm pretty sure they all knew about each other. So is this some kind of radical new relationship, or is this trying to pull us back into dark energy where the man is the one that's in control? And, you know, in a lot of ways, how this is portrayed feels very manipulative to me. Again, it's couched in the right terminology. And so let's talk about that a little bit. So his wife talks in the video, and she talks about how she never felt safe because in her previous relationship, something was always hidden. And monogamy never worked out for her because ultimately, like her partner would cheat on her. And I think a lot of women can relate to a relationship where the person is never faithful to you. She says she wanted safety and stability, and that she felt like Aubrey provided this for her, and she felt like she was, quote, radically chosen. She goes on to say that he presses her edges to show her where she isn't free. And she wants him to feel loved no matter who he is. So there's some things here that we maybe could relate to distorted twin flame templates. He presses her edges to show her where she isn't free. Now, yeah, we do have to go into our shadow and clear things. And our twin does trigger us. But for me, this is kind of going against what she's saying about wanting to feel safe. Because if someone's always pressing your edges, wanting to test your boundaries, then how are you really going to feel safe with them? And, in the twin flame dynamic, in many cases, not all, but in the majority, I would say, the twins go through these kind of, uh, there's a lot of separation because the twins have to go through this clearing. But when you're trying to do it in a relationship, you can have all these distorted energies come up. She says she wants him to feel loved no matter who he is. So, yeah, that's another tricky thing because we are learning to love unconditionally. However, this shows why it's so important to love ourselves and have that relationship with ourselves and to be in that energy of, I'm not going to settle, because loving him doesn't mean that you have to accept that he needs to be with other women. She does say in this video that she's doing this of her own free choice, that no one's coercing her, etc. She goes on to say, I wanted to meet your desires, meaning Aubrey's desires, because I'm most safe because there is nothing in the shadow to bite me. I wanted to love you the way that you deserve to be loved because you love me that way. Again, this doesn't ring true that this is this really high vibrational, pure love. Again, how they're couching this is by making the case that this is a better way of doing relationships because everyone is open and honest about what they're doing. No one is lying. But it all is under this premise of everyone's going to cheat anyways. So we might as well just tell each other about it instead of really committing to each other and becoming a union, you know? She's saying she doesn't want any partners right now. And this doctor that they have on with them, his name is Mark Gaffin, who doesn't seem to be that upstanding of a guy when you look into his background, says, well, it's not a quid pro quo because she doesn't want another partner, but it's the reciprocity of energy that creates balance. And so this is deep respect and in equality. I always question things when it's always the masculine wants this and the feminine says she wants it, but is not really taking part in it, you know? So as they're talking about this, you can see that how they're trying to make this okay is also by saying that if you're feeling negative energy, so basically he would be saying to his wife, if you're feeling negative energy because I want to sleep with another woman, that's your issue. You need to go into your shadow. You need to press your edges and find out why you feel jealous and maybe like why you want to control me. These are not direct quotes, but it's kind of the takeaway energy. again, there's a lot of talk in the New Age community about projection and shadow and spiritual bypassing. They use this term several times in the video. We're not spiritually bypassing, we're going into the negative feelings to clear the negative feelings. But sometimes negative feelings are there to show you that what you're doing is not in alignment with you. Like everything shouldn't be okay with you. Something I think about a lot is how the idea of judgment is kind of in fluctuation right now. Because in the older, kind of more religious time periods, there was a lot of judgment of other people and this idea that we should all be the same. Now, as we're breaking through that, we have this idea of we should never judge anybody. And I think that we really have to be somewhere in the middle. We don't have to judge people in the sense that we need to excommunicate people, perhaps, but there's a lot of people doing things that aren't so great in the world. And we at least have to judge them to say, like, I don't want that in my reality. I don't want that energy to be around me. So you take a good concept like projection. Yes, there are projections, and we do need to clear a lot of projections. But it gets just a little bit distorted. And I've found this sometimes with spiritual people where if they do something hurtful and then you try to call them on it and they just go, well, that's your projection. You need to get over that. That's your own fear. And they refuse to take any accountability. And so sometimes it's a little bit of both. Sometimes there is definitely projection in there that we can look into ourselves about. But sometimes it's like the other person is doing something that's just hurtful and unnecessary, but they feel like they have to be truthful or honest with you. And maybe if they would have said it in a different way or in a different timing or something, it may not have triggered that projection. So, yeah, I feel like we have to be careful because there is a balance, and that just telling someone, well, you're projecting so that you can not take accountability for your own actions is not the right answer either. One of the things I didn't like about this too, that I found very kind of distorted masculine, was when he's talking about this download that he gets in the temple of Isis. And he does go on to talk about how this was so shocking to him, and he makes it very dramatic and talks about how he almost threw himself in the Nile because of the pain that it was causing him to have to accept this download. He says, "This is not the covenant I made with Vi," which, he has this agreement with his wife to bring this third person in. But I'm assuming they had some rules in place about what was acceptable behavior, what she was going to be okay with. Because the only way that any of these kind of open relationships have a chance is if there are a lot of rules. So they have this agreement, I'm assuming, and now he brings this up. And what he's doing really is changing the rules. And he's pressing her edges. Do you see that? Pressing her boundaries and getting her to now expand what she had already agreed to. Now she has to expand again. And again, it's down to her. Like this, she has to go into her shadow and clear her shadow on how this makes her uncomfortable. Meanwhile, it doesn't seem like he has to do much growing in himself on any uncomfortability that he's feeling. He never talks about how he's uncomfortable other than how he feels bad having to tell his wife this message from Isis and knowing that it's going to hurt her. And he says it in the way that's now God is changing the boundaries of the container. So the container of their relationship, it's not him that's pressing her edges, it's God, because this download was from God. And as they're talking about this, his wife is crying, and she goes on to talk again about that wound of feeling like something in relationships always comes out of left field and not feeling safe. But she's, feeling like this has forced her to grow in some way because she feels like she has to accept this now. Or again, she doesn't say she's forced to. She says she's choosing it of her own free will. But I think you can sense some subtle manipulation just in what I'm saying about it. And even on some levels, she recognizes that by what she's saying. But instead of asking him to make a sacrifice regarding this, she feels that she has to make the sacrifice. There comes a point in the video where he's talking about money, and he says he told his wife that if you don't choose this, that's fine. I'll always love you and know that you'll always be financially supported because I'm going to give you some of my money. So I guess he is rich, and he probably is assuming that people are going to say she's been forced into this because she's financially dependent on him. So he's trying to rationalize what he's doing by saying, oh, no, no, no. I told her if she didn't want this, I would, give her money so she could be financially independent. I'm assuming he means when they divorce. So he's not saying this wife that I love so much and that I have this deep connection with, that I had this mystical experience when we were intimate. He's not saying I'm willing to sacrifice my desire for multiple women to make her feel safe. No, instead, I'm going to let her go and divorce her because I know that I can find other women that are going to allow me to live this lifestyle that I'm choosing. But I'm not manipulating her because she's free to make her own decisions, and I'll even financially take care of her. No, that is so toxic to me that he even says this, and he doesn't even see, they don't see the toxicity in that. He's not choosing her ultimately, and I think that I know that you guys on the twin flame journey, like what you really long for is the masculine energy to choose you, not to make an exception for you or to ask, or to see how they can press your boundaries to get you to settle for things that you don't want. Okay, this is distorted masculine. The masculine energy is meant to be what contains the feminine. The feminine is huge, expansive energy. And the masculine becomes the container for that. And that's how the creative energy comes forth, by that unification of the two. But for the feminine to really allow herself to be open and free and in that very expansive energy, she's looking for a masculine to feel safe with. That takes a divine masculine, a masculine energy that has self-control, a masculine energy that's in his heart as well as his sacral chakra. This is not it. Another thing that he says that is distorted masculine energy is he's talking about his girlfriend, and he describes her as being the essence of purity, and how the masculine needs that purity to activate the warrior protector energy. And this doctor, Mark Gaffin, whatever his name is, goes on to say how they've all held this space of purity for each other in this situation. What I don't like about this is, first of all, he's describing his girlfriend has the essence of purity, but not his wife. The girlfriend looks quite a bit younger than the wife, too. And how the masculine needs this purity to activate the warrior protector. Well, he is distorting their purity. Both these women have the potential to be pure, but he has a distorted masculine energy. He can't be in alignment with that. I'm not sure that she is the essence of purity either, because they both seem to me like they're in a distorted feminine energy, or I don't think they would find this dynamic acceptable. But he's also not being the warrior protector. How can he be the warrior protector in this situation? I don't see how there can't be at least times in this relationship where he's not hurting one or both of these women by what he's choosing. They talk a lot about freedom too, and if having freedom in relationship, to me, this has a touch of dark energy in it too. It takes something beautiful and of the light, and it distorts it. Freedom can be of God, but freedom can also be of evil. It depends how we're choosing to use freedom and what we're doing with that freedom. So we can be free to be authentic in relationship with each other and be ourselves, and that is of the light. Or we can see freedom as just being about pleasure, and that comes through a lot in the distorted masculine energy, because a lot of men, all they're interested in is sex. And I've had conversations with men that are of the mind of like, well, you should just want to embrace pleasure. And whenever, you see someone you're attracted to, you should just go have sex with them. And they see that as freedom. But I think when you're on a higher spiritual path, that empty sexual experience seems very dark. It's not something that most people on a high vibration want to partake in. And it's not always good to be allowing these multiple partners into your field. When we just want pleasure for pleasure's sake, that really can open us up to satanic and demonic energy. That is what the dark energy wants us to believe, that we have the right to fulfill every whim, every fantasy, and there's no shame in it, and there's no guilt in it. Well, I feel like learning to transcend our ego means that we have to step away from the Maya and illusion on the planet. We have to see that pleasure in the moment is not necessarily the right thing for us, and that it can lead us down some very dark paths. So maybe what we can take away from this is seeing the distorted masculine and feminine at work and how that distorted energy can then distort the energy of sacred unions. I know that some of you out there have probably had this experience with your twin where they've wanted to be polyamorous or have an open relationship, because I've had people in the past want to talk to me about that exact situation. Very often though, what I find is that the feminine energy feels pressured to do this because she does love the masculine so much. She's trying to make him happy and she wants to maintain that connection. But we can see now that the new feminine that is not holding the distortions would not be in alignment with that and would have the strength and power to say no, no thank you to that. Again, to each their own. And maybe there's some of you out there that practice that form of relationship and you're doing okay with it. Again, I'm not here to tell people what to do. I'm just giving my opinion and wanting to just have this discussion about this two types of divine feminine energy that's showing up. Well, no, I'm not going to call that divine feminine energy because I don't feel like it is divine. I feel like it's coming from a distorted energy. So we'll just say the feminine energy. And I think that the masculine is also going through a lot of shifts and change. They're probably being more pressured to change than the feminine right now. And so maybe this guy is feeling that pressure and he thinks that he is embodying a divine masculine energy and he doesn't realize that he's somewhat deluded about what that is, or he has interference on him. But it could be that it's his own shadow that is afraid to change and to let go of the distorted masculine that is that wild stallion energy that I can't be faithful, I can't be monogamous. And so somehow trying to twist that distorted energy to fit a narrative that he's more comfortable with. So let me know in the comments what you guys think about this. Share if you have an open relationship with your twin flame, or if your twin flame has recently come back, but you are witnessing that they are in this distorted masculine energy still. Let us know about that too. Just a reminder to everybody that I have a new service, which is Spirit Release Therapy, which is looking at many different factors in your energy field to remove entities, earthbound spirits, witchcraft, curses, cords, checking your chakras, checking your grounding, soul fragmentation, and so much more in order to return you to sovereignty. You can go to my website and find out more about that. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon.